Deep beneath the Arctic surface, there is a predator that seems almost impossibly poorly equipped for the job it has to do. The water around it may be only a few degrees above freezing, and at several hundred meters depth, there is barely enough light for a human eye to distinguish shapes. The animal itself can grow to more than 6 meters long, yet it moves through this darkness at a pace that would make almost any other large predator seem fast. Some of these sharks also carry something on their eyes. A small pinkish-white copepod called Omatocoida elongata attaches directly to the cornea and can damage the transparent tissue that allows light into the eye. The parasite has been associated with severe visual impairment for decades, and in some Arctic populations, infection is extraordinarily common. That should be a serious problem for a predator. Except the Greenland shark is not supposed to be catching seals. It is far too slow. Researchers measured these sharks swimming at an average of about 0.34 meters per second, with a maximum recorded speed of only 0.74 meters per second. At roughly 2 degrees Celsius, its muscles simply cannot produce the kind of acceleration needed to chase a seal through open water. And yet seals are repeatedly found in Greenland shark stomachs, including intact and apparently freshly ingested animals. So the real mystery is not how long this shark can live. It is how an enormous, slow-moving predator with damaged eyes can find a fast-moving marine mammal in one of the darkest environments on Earth and get close enough to eat it. The Greenland shark, Somniosus microcephalus, is one of the largest predatory sharks in the northern oceans. It is found throughout the Arctic and North Atlantic, from the waters surrounding Greenland and Canada to Iceland, Norway, and the far northern Atlantic. Although individuals have occasionally been recorded in relatively shallow water, the species is predominantly associated with deep, cold environments, and researchers have recorded it at nearly 3,000 meters. It is an animal built around an environment in which almost everything happens slowly. The shark's body temperature follows the surrounding water, its metabolism is exceptionally low, and its swimming movements are among the slowest recorded for a fish of comparable size. Watanabe and colleagues described the Greenland shark as the slowest fish relative to body size in their 2012 study, finding a tail beat frequency of only around 0.15 hertz during cruising. That means roughly 1 complete tail movement every several seconds. For a seal, that is no contest. A seal can accelerate, turn, dive, and disappear. The shark cannot simply pursue it. Instead, it has to detect the seal early, approach without being noticed, or encounter it when the seal is unable to escape. And that is where the eyes become important. For years, the Greenland shark's eyesight was treated as almost an afterthought. The copepod Omatocoida elongata is one of the most visually obvious parasites known from sharks, because adult females can remain attached directly to the cornea. Pathological examinations have documented lesions and damage to the corneal tissue, and researchers have long considered the infection capable of producing major visual impairment. The parasite is also remarkably common in some populations. Christian Berlin's classic 1961 survey of Greenland sharks in southeast Greenland found copepods on the eyes of the overwhelming majority of sharks examined, with bilateral infections particularly common. Later studies have confirmed that the parasite is widespread, although prevalence varies substantially between locations. The obvious conclusion was that many Greenland sharks were effectively hunting with their vision compromised, but a recent study published in Nature Communications complicated that picture. Lily G. Fogg and colleagues examined the Greenland shark visual system using retinal anatomy, gene expression, molecular analysis, and direct measurements of how light passes through the cornea. What they found was not the degraded visual system expected from an animal supposedly dependent on almost no vision. The retina was intact and dominated by rods, the photoreceptors specialized for extremely low light conditions. The researchers found the cellular machinery required for rod-based vision, including the major components of the phototransduction pathway, and the shark's visual pigment was tuned toward blue wavelengths that dominate the underwater light environment. The researchers also tested the corneas themselves. Even when parasites were attached around the edges of the cornea, the samples transmitted substantial amounts of light. In the blue portion of the spectrum, the shark corneas transmitted between roughly 66 and 100% of incoming light in the samples examined. The conclusion was striking. The Greenland shark appears to retain a functional visual system adapted to very dim light, so the parasite may impair vision without necessarily destroying it. That distinction matters. The shark is not simply a blind animal drifting through the Arctic. It may still be seeing something, very little, but enough to matter. And then there is the strangest part of the parasite. For more than half a century, researchers have wondered whether Omatocoita elongata might actually produce light. The idea goes back to Berlin's 1961 paper, which discussed the possibility that the parasite and its host could have a relationship resembling mutualism. If the copepod were genuinely luminous, the theory proposed that its position directly over the shark's eye could make it visible to nearby animals in the darkness. That creates an extraordinary possibility. A parasite could damage the shark's eye while simultaneously attracting prey toward the shark. Instead of being purely harmful, the organism might accidentally function as a fishing lure. The problem is that there is still no convincing experimental evidence that this happens. The supposed bioluminescence of this parasite has never been firmly demonstrated, and there is no experiment showing that seals or fish are attracted to the parasite's light. So the glowing lure should not be treated as a solved piece of Greenland shark biology. It remains an open hypothesis. But the fact that the hypothesis has survived for decades tells scientists something important about how little is known about the shark's actual hunting behavior. Almost everything about the animal suggests that its senses must work together. The lateral line provides one of those systems. Along the shark's body are fluid-filled sensory canals capable of detecting changes in water movement and pressure. When another animal swims nearby, it creates disturbances that propagate through the surrounding water. A seal does not have to be visible for the shark to detect that something is moving. The closer the shark gets, the more useful another system becomes. Around the head are the ampullae of Lorenzini, tiny electroreceptive organs capable of detecting weak electrical fields produced by living animals. Muscles contract, nerves transmit signals. Those biological processes generate electrical activity. A predator capable of detecting those fields does not need perfect vision to locate a living target at close range. And before the shark reaches that stage, there is smell. The chemical world of the ocean extends far beyond the limits of eyesight. Blood, tissue, waste products, and other biological compounds disperse through the water, creating trails that can persist long after the animal that produced them has moved on. For the Greenland shark, this is especially useful because its hunting environment is so visually poor. The shark can follow information rather than an image. It does not necessarily need to know what the prey looks like. It needs to know where the prey is. That distinction may explain how such a slow animal can occupy the role of a major Arctic predator. But it still leaves the seal problem. In a 2019 study of 88 Greenland sharks, researchers found a clear change in diet as the sharks grew. Smaller individuals relied heavily on squid, while larger sharks increasingly consumed fish and marine mammals, including seals. The researchers concluded that the evidence supported active predation on fast-swimming seals and large fish. That finding is difficult to reconcile with the shark's measured swimming performance. The shark cannot win a conventional chase, so researchers began looking for another explanation. One possibility is that the shark does not attack seals when they are at their best. It attacks when they are vulnerable. Seals sometimes sleep in the water, and this has led researchers to propose that Greenland sharks may ambush resting animals. The idea is not that the shark suddenly accelerates and overtakes a seal. Instead, it approaches so slowly that the seal may not recognize the threat until the shark is already within striking distance. The hypothesis remains unconfirmed. No one has followed a Greenland shark through the darkness and watched the complete sequence of a successful attack on a sleeping seal. But the stomach evidence makes the problem difficult to dismiss. In the 2019 study, researchers found 2 intact, freshly ingested harp seals inside a 4.7-meter Greenland shark. The seals showed none of the scavenging damage expected from prolonged exposure as carcasses, and the authors argued that the evidence supported recent predation. The same study also documented circular bite wounds on large marine animals that matched the distinctive shape of the Greenland shark's mouth. So although scavenging certainly occurs, the shark cannot simply be dismissed as a slow-moving garbage collector. It is capable of killing living prey. The question is how. The answer may begin with something that looks like a disadvantage. The Greenland shark is slow enough that almost every encounter with a healthy seal should end with the seal escaping. But the shark does not live in warm, clear water where speed is the only way to hunt. It lives in an environment where the water itself changes the rules. At around 2 degrees Celsius, The shark's muscles cannot operate like those of a warm-bodied predator. Yet the same cold dramatically reduces the energy required to maintain the shark's body. In 2020, Emily Steymarie and colleagues published the first direct measurements of Greenland shark metabolic rate. Their work showed just how low the animal's energy expenditure can be, providing physiological evidence for the extremely slow lifestyle that field observations had suggested. For this shark, moving slowly is not simply a limitation, it is cheap. A predator that spends relatively little energy traveling through the water can afford to search for long periods, investigate chemical trails, and approach prey without repeatedly exhausting itself. The shark does not need to spend energy chasing everything it detects. It can wait for the right opportunity, and the cold may create those opportunities. A seal remains far more capable of rapid movement than a Greenland shark, but a resting seal is a different target from a fleeing one. If the shark can locate the animal before the animal detects the shark, the enormous difference in swimming speed may never become relevant. The shark does not need to be faster than the seal, it needs to be closer. That is a very different kind of predation. It is also why the Greenland shark's other senses become so important. Smell can lead it toward a target from a distance. The lateral line can detect movement through the water. Electroreception can help locate living tissue at close range. Low-light vision can still provide useful information where enough blue light remains. And its extremely slow movement can reduce the sensory disturbance it creates as it approaches. The shark's hunting strategy is therefore not built around one extraordinary sense. It is built around combining several imperfect ones. That may be the real reason the parasite does not cripple it. The eye does not have to carry the entire burden. The shark has other ways of constructing a picture of its surroundings. There is another adaptation that allows the animal to survive the physical environment itself. Greenland sharks carry high concentrations of trimethylamine oxide, or TMAO, a compound found in many marine animals, but particularly important in organisms exposed to high pressure. TMAO helps stabilize proteins and other cellular structures under the destabilizing effects of pressure. That becomes increasingly important as the shark descends into deeper water. But the chemistry has an unpleasant side effect. Fresh Greenland shark flesh contains enough nitrogenous compounds to be toxic when eaten without proper preparation. TMAO can be converted into trimethylamine after the tissue begins to break down, producing the powerful ammonia-like odor associated with untreated Greenland shark meat. The traditional Icelandic food hakarl exists partly because of this chemistry. The meat is cured and dried for months before it is considered safe to eat. For the shark, however, the same biochemical environment is simply part of being a deep-water animal. Pressure, cold, and darkness are tolerated, and even impaired vision can be tolerated. The animal does not overcome these conditions by becoming more powerful. It becomes less dependent on the things the environment can take away. That may be the most important lesson from the Greenland shark. Its success is not based on having the best version of every predator's equipment. Its eyes are vulnerable and muscles are slow. Its metabolism is low, and its environment is cold and dark. Yet none of those limitations prevents it from becoming a large, long-lived predator capable of consuming seals, large fish, and other marine animals. The parasite on its eye makes that story even more unusual, but perhaps not for the reason originally assumed. For years, the obvious narrative was that the Greenland shark was essentially blind because something had colonized its eyes. The newest evidence suggests a more complicated animal. The shark's visual system is intact. Its retina is specialized for extremely dim conditions. Its corneas can still transmit substantial amounts of light, and its other senses provide information that vision cannot. The parasite may impair that system. It may have little effect on the shark's overall ability to hunt, and the possibility that it produces light and attracts prey remains unresolved. The most interesting part is that scientists still cannot say exactly how much each of these senses contributes during a real hunt. The actual attack is almost impossible to observe. The sharks live in cold, remote waters. They can travel from shallow regions into depths of more than 2 kilometers, but they spend much of their lives in darkness. And when they encounter prey, the event happens in an environment where cameras and divers cannot easily follow them. Researchers are therefore left reconstructing the hunt from evidence. A stomach containing a seal, measurement showing how slowly it can swim, a retina revealing how it sees, and a parasite attached to the cornea. Each piece explains part of the animal. None completely explains the moment when a 6-meter shark reaches a seal. That moment remains hidden. and perhaps that is why the Greenland shark is more interesting than its reputation suggests. It is often introduced through its age, as though surviving for centuries is the entire story. It is not. The more revealing fact is that this animal has found a way to make an environment that seems hostile to hunting work in its favor. It does not need clear water or high-speed muscles. It does not need perfect eyesight, but it can build a picture of its surroundings from pressure, electrical signals, chemical trails, and whatever faint light survives at depth. Somewhere in that sensory network is an eye carrying a parasite that may severely impair it, and somewhere within the history of that parasite is a strange hypothesis that it might actually glow. If that glow exists, nobody has yet shown that the shark uses it. If it does not, the mystery disappears, but the shark remains, moving through water that can barely rise above freezing, traveling so slowly that a seal should be able to escape, searching through darkness with senses that do not depend entirely on sight. Then, when the right opportunity appears, closing the distance. The Greenland shark does not need to dominate its environment through speed. It has spent its evolutionary history becoming extraordinarily difficult to stop, and beneath the Arctic ice, where almost no human can watch it, that strategy is still being tested every night. The shark moves through the darkness. The prey may never see it, and the reason it works is not because the Greenland shark can see perfectly in the dark. It is because it has learned to hunt in a world where seeing is only one way of knowing what is there.